And welcome to the AEW WrestleDream review. We are the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture. I'm Adam Wilborn, joined by Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, here to review everything that happened at AEW WrestleDream over the weekend. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube, where we do daily wrestling podcasts where we not only review AEW Dynamite, but also AEW Collision, Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. Pay-per-views, premium live events. We have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a round of the week complete with a very good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. As said, though, joined by Hamflett and Sidgwick to review AEW WrestleDream live on YouTube. Apologies for the late start.
Well, yeah.
I nipped home. I thought I had time to nip home and have a bit of lunch and spend some time with my family. And my son had shoved some sweet potato in his ear. So I spent my lunch break fishing that one out, basically. But here we are.
AEW wax, it's the same colour.
Yeah, AEW WrestleDream.
The top or something.
We've got a new little bit of kit. You know, it's a nightmare. Anyway, but WrestleDream. Sid, your thoughts?
I thought the show was very, 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 very good. You might notice that I'm hesitant to use the word great. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would call it great, and they probably got really great arguments for that. But AEW's got a standard, an absolutely seminal standard, and I think they reached that standard elsewhere this year. Dynasty was just absolutely glorious. All In peaked higher than this.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of old money fours here, like old money 4-star matches. Nothing that would trouble match of the year conversations. As a result, I don't think this would trouble many match show of the year, but I had a really, really, really good time with it. I admired the range, and I might, now that Bryan Danielson has retired full-time, might have a new favourite wrestler.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it's just recency bias, but as I say, what I often say, it makes you feel less dead.
I probably broadly agree with that. I think I went online afterwards because I thought I've had a good time with this, and it felt like everyone was racing to get out their takes about how this was like the best show ever, their favourite show ever. Like, I don't know if that's got that little bit that Adam Wilborn just after the main event energy where it's like, well, I love that, so as a result, loved all this. Now, I didn't share that, but it was nice to see people having such a good time, or at least wanting to talk about such a good time they had with the card, even if, like, in a lot of the matches individually, I didn't feel it myself. So I'm sensing that I'll probably be, maybe I don't know, like...
You're the outlier.
I don't think I'm the outlier. I'm just saying lower than consensus. Outlier is an over-exaggeration. Some people just weren't that arsed. But I saw a lot of, like, massive, massive, massive praise, and there was that sense of, like, I want to gush over how much I love that. And I think that comes from a good place when people want to be so enthusiastic about something online. It tends to mean that, like, it's real because you just want to just get it out there and get it, get the conversation going.
Yeah, speaking of the recency bias, I didn't have a good time watching the show, but that's only because it was such a horrible ending that my memory was just like, oh, I'm sad now. Yeah. Like, me and Andy talked a little bit about this on the news. We're so used to, and this is across both companies, generally the rule is the end of the show is either, Bryan Danielson or All In, yay, the world's perfect, or All Out. Oh, God, what happens now? And maybe it's like a heel champion standing tall or whatever. This was just like, Excalibur's in tears, Bryan Danielson's being carried out, it's over. What happens next? But I suppose that's the perfect intrigue to lead us into to AEW Dynamite, which we'll, of course, preview later on this week. Let's start at the beginning of the show, not the pre-show. The beginning of the show,
no.
Rico was on the pre-show, which was fun. The main card started with...
Yeah, he looked great because he's like 63.
I think he's had some health issues as well, so fair play to him.
He looked amazing.
So close. Second match on the card was the women's match, but the opening to the show was Jay White versus Hangman Adam Page, and I'll give credit to both of you. You both called this result. You said that despite Hangman Page's iffy record, it's, as you mentioned on the preview, it's because this isn't you, Hangman, and he loses yet again, but in a very different way, and a lot of praise I've seen for this new version of Jay White.
Yeah, I mean, my take generally, I understand that there are a lot of people anxious about the direction of Hangman Page. This might be copium on my part, I might be reaching bro, but my take since day one of this new Hangman Page turn was he looks lost. I don't think he's magically turned into a bad man. He seems to revel in it a bit more.
Yeah.
With some taunts. I just feel like he's such a fully realised character in a fictional world is distinct from a heel wrestler who's turned heel after he was a babyface. I always think it's deeper with Hangman. I might be reaching, but I think the play here is that, in a way, as much as I want the best thing for his career, and I'm not saying a heel Hangman Page title run, for example, wouldn't be amazing, it's like I gravitate towards that character in a way that I don't with a lot of other professional wrestlers. I just think he puts the graft in, the thought in. And in my opinion, I just don't want the world for this version of Hangman because I know deep down the character is a better dude than this. So when he's not winning and it's still going a bit wrong for him, I think that they're playing the long game and he's going to win more as a babyface. And I've said it 1 million times and I'll say it one more time. That babyface theme is going to be incredible when he finally brings it back. Jay White might be my new favorite wrestler. I'm going to
Really?
with Kenny Omega on extended hiatus and Bryan Danielson gone in a full-time capacity, then I might need a new one. This match was so good for a start, and more to the point, it was just so incredibly refreshing. Later on, there's a show that later on in the show, there was a match that people were higher on than this opener. Not me. That was this exhilarating, athletically impossible, really intricate shootout. It was, you know what I'm talking about, but we'll get to it. There's something so refreshing about watching a babyface develop a strategy, work towards that strategy, sort of execute that strategy in a really thoughtful and creative and painful looking way, and win a match.
Yeah.
That spot. So basically, if you've missed WrestleDream and you're catching up, he does a shin breaker, is that what you call it? Shin breaker on the edge of the ramp. Any move that makes me visibly recoil in horror and pain, especially when it's not some kind of brain-dead chair shot to the head or something, like an actual wrestling move. Yes, you know, it can work it, basically. You can very easily work something like this, provided you're a master craftsman. I was just so impressed by this. It was so refreshing. It was the best G1 match I've seen in years and years, even if it wasn't specifically. It was just this emphasis on strategy, a really intelligent baby face. You know what this was? And I think I've developed in my head now why I loved it so much. It was as if Bret Hart was wrestling in the G1.
I was going to call him Bret the Switchblade Hart. Honestly, that's how I felt watching this.
If Bret Hart ever wrestled in the G1, that's what it would look like.
It wasn't just Jay White's ability to do all the things he already does as a heel, like the counter game that we've spoken about, like the extra sort of, like the viciousness and the snap that he puts into things. It was how you could completely buy into this idea that Jay White has studied tape. So it's like he's gonna cut off all of Hangman Page's best attacks, and then in the process of cutting those off, set his own traps to spring later on. Like the finish is gorgeous to watch, but I've watched sort of the last sort of 5 minutes of this match back because I liked it that much. And it's not as clean in your head as it plays out on screen. The example I was using when me and Sid were talking about this over the desk this morning is, you know, when Jericho rips the mask off Rey Mysterio in one fluid motion. So that's really quite beautiful to look at as a bit of execution. This is not that, but it felt it in the moment because you're trying to catch up with Jay White's precision. And you're trying to catch up with like what he's applied scientifically this one to get it done. You're thinking he's got a chance of getting you. You're waiting for the Hangman leg sell on the buckshot when he flips over, and because you're waiting for that, you're then not paying attention to Jay White getting himself in position to trap him and finish him off. This stole the show for me. I absolutely love this. We talk a lot and we're critical of, and maybe, I don't know, I worry that it bores listeners or viewers, or people think that we're being spoiled when we say, oh, that was a good match with good wrestlers, it's a great way to stay in shape. And, or our general cynicism towards good wrestling, capital G, capital W. One of my biggest complaints when I watch matches like that is that I don't really feel like the wrestlers are in themselves.
Trying to win.
Yeah, they're not trying to win. I don't feel like I'm watching wrestler A actually be wrestler A. I'm watching them just do the things that wrestlers do. This couldn't have been more 2024 babyface Jay White versus 2024 heel Hangman Page for trying. They were so locked into their characters, and at no point did either of them betray it. And it was like really fabulously executed pro wrestling. But more than that, I just bought them. This felt real, and that's the Bret thing for me, was that you never for a second doubted that he felt like it was real. And that's what I got from both. This Hangman Page character keeps doing this in like the big matches with the big wrestlers as well. Like, he is so locked in that he's bringing stuff out. There's probably nobody better on this roster to give Jay White his first big airing of this babyface character against the wrong guy. It maybe just doesn't work, or Jay White just kind of leans too heavy one way and is like, there's still the heel switchblade. There was nobody better. That's a fabulous matchmaking as well. And is it bold booking? Probably a little bit to give Hangman Page another defeat, but as Sidge keeps pointing out, these losses are for something, not just to get other guys over. The other people getting over is an added benefit, really.
I like the not just the finish, obviously, but I like the bit where just because Jay White is a new babyface, he's still not forgotten what heels do, and you sense that in his head, he's like, right, I've done the shin breaker, he's in a bit of trouble here. What would I do if I was in this situation? I'd probably take the referee and try and hit a cheeky low blow. Yeah. So he's smart enough to know to get out of the way of that because of his history.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if AEW was in a healthier place creatively and culturally, this would be the start of something. You can never be too sure nowadays. It's 2024. But this Jay White performance was absolutely fabulous, I thought. And just one more note on Hangman. I love how, I think it's like a bit of a pattern here, and it's very deliberate. If you remember it All Out, it was Swerve who remembered what Hangman had done against Lance Archer in the Texas Death and used the referee, because he couldn't use it, he was caged in, using the traditional buckshot.
Yeah.
So, and Swerve was like, I remember what you did, but like, Hangman's mind and body are just so far apart right now that he can't connect what he's doing. It's just this brute rage that he's trying to do, but that's not him. He's a sensitive, thoughtful dude. And that's like the caveat, the story now of the buckshot. He's deserted the buckshot. He's lost everything, and he's articulating this through his wrestling by the fact that the buckshot can be countered and he can't even do it properly anymore.
I also like to
in the big occasions, obviously. He's going to beat Juice Robinson, no offense, with it.
Yeah.
But in the big matches, it just doesn't work for him anymore.
I like the idea of this week turning up to Dynamite is a bit like when your favourite football team loses and you hear the stories from the dressing room where the players walk in and just look at the ground. Do not catch the eye of the manager because you'll get a bollocking from him. This week on Dynamite, don't catch the eye of Hangman Page, kick your ass. He wants to kick someone's ass. Yeah. And very excited to see where he goes from here. But like you say, the match was so good because I did go in going, put the women. Sidge said they'd put the women on first, and they should.
I didn't say they would. I said they never do, and they should.
Yes. But yeah,
more
than deserved.
They did it once, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe Britt Baker, Big Swole. Did that go first?
It did, because Tony Khan got bullied into taking it off the pre-show and putting it on the main card. So it was like,
one time it should have stayed there.
But yeah, what followed Jay White versus Hangman Page was the AEW Women's World Title match. Mariah May versus Willow Nightingale, who came close, but Mariah May remains AEW Women's World Champion.
I thought this was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It's just a total unvarnished scrap where I feared for the necks about 3 or 4 times. That spot where Willow just grabs Mariah May by the back of the head and smashes it against her own knee. Like, she is a vengeful badass, and the juxtaposition between her real life personality and her character outside of the ring and what she does inside of it just remains absolutely wonderful. But it's never like just this novelty or never played too irreverent. It's just wonderful. Thought Mariah May had her best night in the ring maybe ever. I mean, Allin was very, very good, but I think the melodrama soured some people on it. This is our best match since the last Willow match. Willow's becoming that constant.
I was going to say, is Willow now becoming... Remember we all had that realisation at one point when we were like, Charlotte Flair, I'm not a huge fan of her, but she has had the best match with Bayley and this person and this person. Then you suddenly go, wait a second, Charlotte Flair's the reason. Willow's the reason people have their best match. Mercedes, Mariah...
She's becoming the thread, and she's becoming absolutely undeniable. Trust AEW to deny her, at least in terms of, I reckon she'll win the Women's Championship.
Yeah.
Promotional malpractice if she does not. But no, I want the main event. I want the opener. I want TV main events. Like, you can put the marketing machine behind Willow. She's so over. She's so good. She's so consistent. She elevates literally everything she's in. I thought this match was an absolute joy to watch, with that sort of tone, that hateful, proper, we are wrestling as people who hate each other, and there was not a single weapon used as far as I can recall, and it absolutely 1,000,000% did not need one, and I love it. The finish was awesome. God damn it, Willow took a header that terrified me on the bump. But she, I think, has told you, that's how I win the title. One of these days, I'm going to do that powerbomb off the top rope, avalanche style, and I'm going to win. I just couldn't nail it yet. I'd be surprised. Maybe I am a bit too generous with AEW in 2024, but these details always tend to pay off later. I think she's avalanche powerbombing her way to the AEW Women's World Title, and I would do a decent chase as well. If my job is booking that women's division on top of everything else, I'm plotting that out and taking some goddamn care with it.
Yeah, we've mentioned Willow in the past having these things where she loses a title match, and then it's through no fault of her own. It's like, oh, do you remember this? Well, actually, she's got another title match for this 2 weeks later or whatever. Make a story point now of like she's as far as she can possibly be from the title.
I mean, if it was anybody else except Willow, she's a cheat code. You're obviously going to want to support her in a title match. That's how great of a personality and a wrestler she is. Anybody else, they just attract so much resentment for the amount of opportunities she's had. Luckily, people just deflect the heat onto the booker, as should be the case. But she should come off way more entitled than she does. But it's Willow. You're never going to think that she's the best.
It's helpful as well. I think the last time we felt like this division had an ace quite like this, it was Toni Storm on her own rise, and when she had the interim title, when Thunder Rosa was still out injured, and there was this sense of sooner or later she's got to be the real women's champion, which she then did go on to win the belt, and she's like kind of held it off and on ever since then, really. But I think Willow Nightingale is the first person to come and step up and feel like she's taking that role, and that division really needs an ace, because a lot of the time it's just not given much care creatively. But if you've got that one wrestler that you can bank on, as Sidge pointed out, it's a bit of a cheat code in how you can just book her so regularly to get title matches and lose them and get away with it. It wouldn't work if the matches weren't as strong as they were, if the character didn't connect in the way they did. If anything, especially now, quantity of matches works against a wrestler, because there's so much churn and it's too easy to get bored of somebody or take somebody for granted or anything like that. There's no rankings now, so it's not like you can use it as a booking excuse of, well, she's just built up 6 more wins and that's how she's got a title shot. They're not even doing that a lot of the time, and yet it seems not to matter. She's such a gift to this division, and like, they've got great chemistry, Willow Nightingale and Mariah May, physically, because we saw that in the Owen match and in the brawls they had backstage to build this. So that is definitely a benefit, and it was really strong matchmaking on those terms. But they being AEW really have to figure out
Pronoun boy.
have to figure out how to get across what Mariah May does in the ring better with everything else she's doing, because you see a match like this and then you're reminded of the Wembley one and how she won it, and it may be like, I don't know, makes me feel a little bit guilty for thinking that maybe this run's a bit of a busted flush, because when the bell rings, there's a chance of something like this happening, but it couldn't be further away from kind of how they're presenting the rest of the character and the stupid celebration teasers. And I get that they've got to keep links to the Toni Storm story for when they revisit that, and for what the Mariah May character is, the glamour. And it's almost this idea like the what she does in the ring is like this kind of nasty surprise, because you might not necessarily see it coming, the way she handles a business out of the ring. Just bring those two things closer together, because if you do, I think people will have a lot more faith in this run, because she probably gets it right in the ring more than she doesn't, Mariah May. And yet, I think some weeks on Dynamite or on Collision when she appears, you're left thinking the opposite. So this was a brilliant night for her as well. And I just didn't want to write that. I didn't just want to put that down to the obvious chemistry she's got with Willow Nightingale and how great Willow is. Like, I hope there's another one of these in with Mariah May and somebody else before we get to Toni Storm.
What was your reaction on the whole press conference thing where no one had any questions for her? Is that a fault of press? Is that a fault of the booking?
The whole thing's flawed.
I don't really blame the wrestling media, because I think there are lots of faults you can find with members of the wrestling media in those press conferences, AEW and WWE. But I think part of that problem is wrapped up in the fact that the companies themselves don't know what they want these to be. 1 minute you're supposed to be asking real questions and actually getting genuine information. The next minute, a character like a Roman Reigns is coming in saying, "Acknowledge me," or "I will
acknowledge you."
Yeah, it's stupid. You know what I mean? They're sort of weighted against the media and potentially the wrestlers, as was the case here, in the same breath. So the fact that there's no rules laid out for how you're supposed to behave and all that doesn't help anybody. The no questions for Mariah May is embarrassing and awkward. I don't particularly put that on somebody in the room, because if somebody had have just thought, I want to make the silence a bit less awkward. Mariah, that was a really tough contest. What have you got next?
When's your celebration with me?
On another night, that kind of kayfabe question results in that member of the media getting pelters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't win.
The character hasn't got enough depth in it post Toni Storm for people to have these questions. But sometimes you're reaping what you sow with those press conferences. When they go wrong for either side in either way,
You go wrong every single time.
there's always something.
There's something like that happens, or someone, Paul Levesque, gets a question and does an absolutely atrocious job of answering them. These things should not exist. Realistically, what is the point? Like, it's not just that they, in and of themselves, lend themselves to farcical situations like this, or the bookers who want to glorify themselves, have a complete and utter nightmare and make an absolute spectacle of themselves. They just take the shine off the show.
And the access is valuable, and it's a shame they've always been so badly handled, because when else would you get an opportunity to get something out of someone like Tony Khan or a Triple H or the top champions or whoever? Used effectively, these are gifts really to wrestling media that gets so little, and yet it always ends up being a story about something just feels ugly, and it takes the messaging away from the pay-per-view entirely.
I don't think it always works for the UFC either. Like, I watch some of theirs, and sometimes people will try and ask a serious question which people will genuinely want to know the answer to, and they just get dismissed because they feel like they want to make the fighters talk about what they want to do next or have a little fun comment, and Dana's just like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. Like, what are they here for? Why are we doing this? Right, let's move on to the TNT Championship match, Jack Perry versus Katsuyori Shibata, and all the stuff that followed it.
Yeah, I thought Shibata individually looked tremendous here. He just looked like he moved with a deliberate, menace about him. He just looked shot. I loved his face when he just sat on the mat. And I know it's part of the formula now, but just brushing off the kicks, just that sort of, come on, you little prick. I just thought there was a bit of the old magic in Shibata, and then the finish happened. This is gearing up to be something nice. I think some of the wrestling was really fluid. I like the idea that if Shibata was told, Jack Perry's not a little bitch, you're meant to take him a bit seriously. I don't think he got that memo, when it was just a nice match as a result. It was weird how the wrestler didn't realise that his shoulders were pinned to the mat. I don't like a finish like that. No. I just thought it made the wrestler, that's his goddamn nickname, look a little bit like a chump who'd forgotten one of the... It's like when the babyface who turns their back and they can say after the fact, they can put the lampshade on and say, I shouldn't have turned my back, but you still did it to contrive something. Weakest match on the card. Jack Perry continues to not be it.
Felt like AEW knew it with all the stuff that went afterwards. Felt like they knew this was going to be... Even if it's just the finish was going to be like...
Let's put it this way, this is on Dynamite, I would have been disappointed. As a massive, massive fan of Katsuyori Shibata, I was very much energized and encouraged by his individual performance. I just felt there was something different about him. Jack Perry just is not over. He is not worthy of this prolonged title reign. And if you can have the weakest match on an AEW pay-per-view, start asking questions about what we're actually doing here.
I feel like we've mostly moved on from debates about pay-per-view lengths, because ultimately they're going to just play out as they do, AEW. I actually think that we were a little bit more disciplined with All In and All Out as well, but for the most part, you kind of know what you're getting. WrestleDream was all that sort of traditional, quantity of matches, show length. There was just a lot of content to sift through. And I think what you're seeing now, maybe one of the reasons why there's less debate than there used to be, is because fans will just react organically to what they like at this point in these shows. We were talking just before we came on about how lengthy pre-shows risk, on relatively unimportant fluff, risk actually tiring audiences out right before you go live. I'm saying that, and I feel that, and we've kind of lived a version of it at a long AEW taping ourselves before, and yet everyone came up for Jay White, Hangman Page. Everyone was banging to Willow and Mariah. They weren't really into this, and then the match never particularly gave them a reason to. And I think at this point, it's maybe less about exhaustion or come down or anything like that. I honestly do think fans are choosing when to engage and when they feel like their investment is worthwhile. And it's not like the story going into this was that great, and then it's not like anything happened in this match that drew anybody in.
So I know that they had a lot of video packages to set these matches up.
Yeah, it's, ultimately a lot of this card felt thrown together, don't get me wrong, but you could tell on the night the stuff that fans were willing to go along with because they knew that they were being rewarded by the action. This was not that.
But like I said, it was kind of overshadowed by obviously what happened afterwards. It looks like Jack Perry's going to beat up Shibata even more afterwards. And then Daniel Garcia runs down to make the save. MJF returns, and then so does Adam Cole.
Yes. Get it over with. Get it over with at Full Gear, which is probably the direction. And then it's just so odd how after the devil... so the devil angle happens, and the reveal, and Adam Cole can't do anything about it because his foot is shattered. Then months later, after they realize, I think it was like reported that it was painful for Cole to even travel, he's off TV. MJF does his return at a pay-per-view as a babyface. Adam Cole comes out and gets a brain buster. Months later, Adam Cole makes his return to a pay-per-view at WrestleDream, and he's the babyface just because MJF's the heel. This, if you mapped this entire storyline out, it makes zero sense. You can't not go in the direction that they're heading. I don't envy them now, but at the same time, the blame rests completely on AEW. As soon as Adam Cole's ankle was completely obliterated, for his own goddamn sake, he should just be allowed to just recuperate at home. Why did he need to be on TV? He couldn't do anything. Hard to take a mastermind heel sort of big bad seriously when he's on crutches. The whole thing was ridiculous. They're reaping what they sow now. They are reaping what they sow with their absolutely insane decision to just get that. They must have had a lot of merch sold for Better Than You, baby, because they bloody dragged it on senselessly. That Full Gear main event last year and the booking of it was deranged. Absolutely deranged. Vince Russo level deranged. Get it over with. These two characters have a reason to hate each other. It would be weirder and probably worse if they just ignored each other. But I think the happy medium, if there is one to be reached, is in them two just having a match, then going their separate ways and doing other things in storylines subsequent to that. One more interesting thing here, potentially. Either it's just now typical AEW, half-baked, underthought ideas. Daniel Garcia said he wasn't going to get Little Broad anymore, and Adam Cole just completely outshines him in this segment and is positioned as the guy who is the real concern. And Garcia, this could have happened to him last year, Garcia might turn heel on Adam Cole. That would be my idea. He's got Little Broad. He got Little Broad, and he used those exact words on, Wednesday?
Yeah.
To say, it's not happening to me anymore. It literally happens on Saturday. Either that's a deliberate choice, and Garcia's going to either turn heel or acknowledge it, and it's going to inform his character arc in some way, or it's just, what are we doing here again?
I think that was just a mistake because of how he was featured at the end and the expectation that he'll win the TNT title. So I think they'll just want you to forget about that. I think that was just bad creative in that moment because everything else for Daniel Garcia looks pretty rosy, and that was the one sort of outlier there. I kind of like this play to my clap and seal nature.
If you're MJF, you're doing that.
Yeah. This played to my clap and seal nature, I think, because I really like this. And I don't know if I just needed it after the match, but I was kind of banging into MJF's surprise return and then really banging it. I've missed Adam Cole. And I think the weirdest thing for me about it wasn't so much the reveal of the devil, but then that second return he made before MJF took him out of Double or Nothing was that we were still stuck with him as a heel because it was just really hard not for him to be a sympathetic figure. Like this guy that, everybody tells you is such a nice guy, and then you have to buy into enjoying Adam Cole as a heel because you understand him to be just the nicest guy in wrestling. I'd rather just receive him as the nicest guy in wrestling for a bit. It was just endured yet another really painful, difficult, long injury layout, like over a year this time, off the back of that concussion one he had before that. So I think, luckily for them, maybe the pieces have set themselves nicely, but I'm with Sidge on get this match out there, get it done, probably have Adam Cole go over, and then just how on earth you square there. I wouldn't want to be the one to have the problem of fixing the Undisputed Kingdom and the Devil and Wardlow and all that mess, but the singles match I think has value. Like they did this, remember when Austin took out Pillman, and then by the time Pillman comes back, Austin's the biggest babyface in the world, so Pillman has to join it with the Hearts. Like these things sometimes go this way, but I wouldn't want to be the one with the job of cleaning up the rest of it. The MJF Cole match, alignments as they are, I've actually got quite a lot of faith in. I think that could be a good bit of business, but the stables, the devil, the everything. Like Wardlow somewhere has got to be told, hang on, he was giving me the evils and we were definitely going to do some business down the road.
You might be the only guy alive who's talking about Wardlow right now.
Yeah.
They kind of Maybe you have to.
Yeah.
They should.
A lot of loose ends, and I don't know how you tie them
I've
up.
had it with this devil crap, this Wardlow crap. What I'm proposing is at Full Gear, that's it.
My new name's Seven, by the way.
When Adam Cole sees out his multi-year injury layoff extensions, I think we have to draw a line on this AEW thing as like...
Dead?
It's like, so much of this should have worked. A few things went against him timing-wise. And like I think there's a WWE return where he's in good fettle, because it was just really, really nice to have him back and sing along with it. Like, he's still got value to me, but I appreciate why it's probably testing people's patience a bit.
Right, so let's talk about the International Championship. Three-way, Will Ospreay the champion, Ricochet, and, well, the new champion, Konosuke Takeshita. What a match this was.
This was great. I'm not like saying it with my full heart. I just like the opener more. And I like the layout of another match a little bit more. And I like Mariah May versus Willow Nightingale more. What I appreciated most about this match, there were certain sequences where I've got so much latitude towards the in-ring. Like, contrary to what I'm like with storylines and the logic there and the way wrestling's presented, in the match, I've kind of got like a different brain. I can just buy things and go with it. There's no way to simulate a realistic match in the confines of a wrestling ring. There were a few moments where I'm like, oh, give over a little bit. And yet, what I really appreciated was Konosuke Takeshita almost being positioned as the surrogate for people who aren't necessarily about that Ricochet Ospreay
hit you really hard.
2016 nostalgia, like him just killing them both when they tried the martial arts pose, whenever they tried to get in the mix, those forearms, those ropes weren't in the ring. I reckon they could have bumped over the barricade. Just the force behind it was absolutely exquisite. As I said, there was
taking off the one protective thing in the elbow pads to hit him even harder.
Yeah. There were certain moments where I'm like, that's a tiny bit contrived, or can we have a little bit of, like, I know you've got adrenaline. I know how delayed selling works. I know how fighting spirit psychology works. Can we have a little bit of, like, just a pained, defiant, I'm in pain, but I'm still going to keep fighting raw. Like, Ricochet just popping back on his feet after the Poison Rana. I know they did that in the first match on Dynamite. Was like, even if Will Ospreay's a little bit broad and histrionic with it, you'll still go, ah! You know? On the subject of which, that goddamn spot where he tried to pop with the hidden blade, it's got crap wrecked. I'm trying not to swear too much.
Thanks.
We're on YouTube. Don't worry, it's coming later today and tomorrow and then for the rest of the week. Was sensational. The spot, right, where Ospreay sort of rolls through a lariat into like an inverted backflip.
Yes.
And then did the Oz cutter. Konosuke Takeshita's timing on that and his footwork and his positioning.
Oh my God.
Like, he looked like he hadn't telegraphed it less, Will Ospreay. Like, Takeshita's movements in those spots were amazing. I thought he was the standout performer in the match. And there was another spot where I can't remember the sequence of events. A lot of it was just not really trying to win that much here. We're just trying to do some cool stuff. And that's why I wasn't necessarily as high as something else on this show. But when the Ricochet just did like some kind of top rope move straight into Ospreay, and you couldn't even see it because it was just so fast. Like, at its best, this was absolutely exhilarating. For me, it was a notch below Ospreay Pac, Ospreay Takeshita, underneath there. But you can't help but be moved by some of it unless you're dead.
Were you pleased that Ricochet got rid of the Christopher Daniels flares?
Yes, that was my... Christopher Daniels is mine. That was my take. I'm having it. Yes, enormously so. He looked like a weird old dude making a bad midlife crisis fashion decision, and I'm very glad. He looked like more the part.
Yeah.
That table bump as well.
Oh, Jesus
yeah.
Christ, it's one of those matches where you could review it 5 times and miss something cool. It would be remiss of me to say that. There was just the odd bit of sequencing at certain points where I'm like a notch below those incredible Ospreay matches. You know, there's a standard. This is still great. I had one more thing to say on this. I've forgotten. I don't think it was that. Yeah. It's so low praise for a 3-way match, but I thought they did an actual 3-way match as opposed to we don't really want to do anything, triple threat or whatever, like a tit or whatever. Spend loads of time, too long if anything, on the outside or
and
whatever.
it wasn't like Ospreay and Ricochet went into the match saying, we're going to team up and beat him down and then we'll sort it out between the two of us. At one point, they're just like, we're going to have to team up, mate, because have you seen how hard he hits with these?
Yeah. So they did. That was the second reason why they teamed up. The first one was probably fair. It always looks a bit weird when you see two baby faces do it on the heel, but he did ruin that match.
Yeah. Before I get your thoughts on it, I just want to, you're the Meltzer whisperer in the office.
5 1/4.
That match was a different level of incredible, he tweeted.
Yeah. I would go in the 5 1/4 to 5.5 star range.
I would agree. It was a different level of incredible, a lower one. Like it was just the Will Ospreay. I just want to remember a Will Ospreay match. Like the ones that really stick with you, like are of that caliber. When people talk about him as not just like the wrestler of the year or the wrestler of this generation, but the best ever. I get it. And then there are, more for me that I don't remember, or more that just like we don't do these live ones in the typical recap way we would, where you go through, mainly because there'd just be probably like steam coming off your laptop.
It's an AEW pay-per-view, mate. It'd be quite hard.
Like, I kind of would need that to be able to isolate the things that made me feel during the match. Because, like, truthfully, not a lot did. Sid mentioned Ricochet just not even really pulling a face in that sequence of Poison Rana things. And I'm not going to pick on them in a way like an engagement account would, but there was a number of cases in this match where I felt like I was watching them, like, move through. Yes, incredible, otherworldly feats of athleticism. But if you've already become detached from quite early on, you're then, I've said this a million times, you're then left thinking about it rather than feeling. Really enjoyed the agenting of Takeshita throughout this. Like a lot of thought and care went into that character coming out of this match as like a primary concern. Like belts just don't mean enough in AEW at the moment. So it's not about him winning the belt. It's about what does that really represent and what has he been able to take from these two wrestlers that are at his level that he's trying to prove that he's above. In that way, this match was extremely effective. It was the sort of thing where they've almost like fast-tracked months of what should have been good booking into just excellent action to get Takeshita where he should have been quite a long time ago. So that's like economical, if nothing else, to fold it into a match that had like, again, this level of sheer athletic brilliance is to be commended, genuinely. But I'm so like, I hear story like Bruce Pritchard when you talk about that. Did I feel like beyond Takeshita just having enough of their antics? No, like I didn't really feel like I was watching Will Ospreay and Ricochet trying to have this, we are still peers, who's going to be the one that comes above, and then this other guy shows them, actually, no, it's my time. I didn't get quite as much of that as I would have liked, other than Takeshita playing spoiler. And speaking of spoiler, I don't blame him for doing it, but like, and it was forgotten by the end of the night because Jim Ross was far worse, but the commentary snafu was weird in the reveal of Carl Fletcher when you knew it was Fletcher. You knew it was going to be Fletcher in a hoodie, but just McGuinness being like, oh, it's Carl Fletcher. And then the other commentators having to go, is it? For sure. Until he pulled down his hoodie, I think was like made that all a little bit awkward on screen as well.
I'm happy with the timing. I'm obviously delighted that Takeshita's the champ. Yeah. I'm happy with the timing of the turn for Fletcher because he couldn't just be that guy who just plays that Bobby Fish, Jay Lethal, Brian Cage role, Beast Mortos role of loses good matches. Like, I think the idea is he could be, I saw him live at Supercard. Live, he's an unbelievable performer. He's obviously got himself in incredible shape. He's changed his look. He feels really motivated. He got someone that young. And I don't necessarily need, personally, to see the next in the lineage of the Ospreay on down, but people evidently do. These matches get insane reactions in the arena, and if he's the true heir to that throne, if he's the latest in that lineage, if he's the actual Ospreay regen, you need to start doing some proper character work and some proper focus with him now, preferably yesterday, but now. So I think broadly all of the post-match was really, really well handled.
Thoughts on the betrayal?
I don't feel anything, but I think people will. Sorry, go on.
No, I just echo Sidge's takes on it, really. It's good that it's happened. It feels like they're across the show, actually. They're committing to a number of different wrestlers that give you the feeling that if this is a company that can function as we know it can, a bunch of stuff is planned down the line. For like there was reason here to invest or continue to invest in several wrestlers that have been basically gasping for air in AEW, in this packed roster, in this like featuring a lot of like over familiar names, like one of which later on down this card. Like there's just for the first time in a while, coming off the good all-in, all-out run, and then a sense of direction for a bunch of wrestlers that previously would have just like fallen into for want of a word, a vortex. And Fletcher's another one. Like as a heel rather than as one of these like babyface saviors, Fletcher just as much feels like he's going somewhere.
Before I forget, thanks to everyone joining us in the chat, by the way, and sending us questions. I will get around to them. I just wanted to give a shout out to Vanders, first person in the chat today, saying, "Happy Monday, gentlemen. Fun fact of the day, all current AEW champions are heels."
Yep. I mean, it seems there's too many champions to begin with. If you are, after the exit of Jimmy Jacobs, trying to do another reboot, the tunnels, can't bring the tunnels back twice, so it's going to be hard.
4 tunnels.
They run the risk of obviously doing it too much. In fact, they will do it too much. It's AEW. I'm sorry, it's just the way these things go. The easiest way to tell stories in pro wrestling is to have babyfaces chase titles. And I'll put it this way, they give themselves ample opportunity to do that.
Next up, sorry. I've really lost my notes up here because I've skipped past a match. I've written next up Darby Allin and Brody King. It wasn't that. I'll try and see if I can call it back from memory. It was the 2 out of 3 falls match, and that featured your favourite. That was Hologram. I'm drawing a blank here.
The Beast, Mortos.
I'm going to go to him first on this one if it's all right. It's his guy, Hologram. Thoughts?
I've got the take and he agreed with it. So.
Okay, so back
Go
to you.
Yeah, go Sid. Sid, whatever. Look at it, whatever.
Don't come to me on WWE first. That's the pattern. Don't get him first. It's AEW.
He likes Hologram,
throw us
doesn't
off, yeah.
Did.
Isn't like much.
I did.
Here's the thing. I thought this show was really well sequenced. You can tell by as well sequenced as an AEW pay-per-view can go. They are too long. They could go half an hour less and I'd be absolutely delighted. Or have a breather between matches or just have 1 or 2 matches not on the card, right? I thought this was really well sequenced by the standards of these. It's weird to call them inherently flawed because to many people, including myself, the very best AEW pay-per-views, and the majority of them are the very best, are some of the best nights in pro wrestling history. They're too long. The sequencing was wrong here. Like Hologram and Beast Mortos, I think even on their best day, they had a great one on Collision. Even on their very best day, the best version of this match simply isn't going to compete with a Will Ospreay match. This was a different match in that it was a lot more undiluted lucha, whereas I would describe the 3-way as like a proper hybrid bomb sprint, whatever. But they've got the same like overall objectives, and that is to pop the crowd by doing absolutely incredible athletic stuff, whether it's stylistically very similar or not. They should have gone on before the 3-way. They should have acted as a primer for the 3-way. The day that Will Ospreay has a match that doesn't get an insane reaction in a building is, well, it's a few years off, yeah. It would be surreal. Say what you want about Will Ospreay's style. It's not necessarily my favorite anymore. The reactions he generates on pay-per-view are absolutely out of this world. It's
the best live crowd wrestler they've got.
I would say by miles, really. Like, the thing about Ospreay is that it's one thing if you don't like the style, right? And I can understand why you don't. It's no longer at the point where, he doesn't wrestle good matches. He exclusively wrestles great matches. And there's a lot of wrestlers you could say that about. Maybe not now, but certainly a few years ago. Will Ospreay doesn't wrestle matches that don't make crowds go fucking ape shit. You know, they lose their mind. It's not like, it was a really hot match, or the heat was good. It's always incandescent. And this is never really going to follow it. I had fun with it. To be honest, at this point, I was waiting to get to some more meaty, like weighty stuff. Certain things looked absolutely immaculate, like the Tierra's counter for that Avalanche Gorilla Press Slam that Beast Mortos does. They could have done that 100 times. It would never have looked as good as that. Not all of it looked amazing, and I thought that the way that the falls were decided was a bit anticlimactic. They just felt like, it didn't really feel like it needed the stip. It just felt like they were given the stip. I reckon they should have done this on Collision. I really think it was. I'm in two minds because Beast Mortos deserved a pay-per-view spot. And if you're going to treat Hologram seriously, he needs to go on pay-per-view. That's why these spots exist. And yet, maybe if there were 2 matches, Jack Perry and Shibata, that weren't on the show, it could have stood out a bit more. So I do agree that it should have gone on pay-per-view, really. But if you're not going to really commit to that step, like in the context of US pro wrestling as well, just didn't feel like there was any drama behind the falls. As soon as the first one was anticlimactic, I was just waiting for... Who got the first one, Beast Mortals?
Hologram.
I was waiting for Beast Mortals to get it back so that they could just go. It's like there was no drama in that second fall at all. I mean, it's a stupid comparison, but look at Omega Okada, 2 out of 3. There's probably like the Battleground 2014, 2013, Usos.
Yeah.
Like there's real drama around the falls in those matches. That was neat drama, but the action was cool.
It was cool. I was higher on the Dynamite one, whereas people were flagging up some of the moments of hesitation or...
It wasn't perfect by any stretch.
No, and this wasn't either. But I think it probably did come down to where it was placed on the card. I agree. This was meritocracy booking for me. Yeah. Hologram has been really entertaining. Yeah, in kayfabe, he's racking up these wins, but he's been a reason to tune into his collision matches. Beat Mortos has just become one of the most over wrestlers in the whole company. So I agree. Absolutely, sort of reward that and almost stress test it a little bit. I don't think this was fairly stress testing it. It was like, no, don't test it like that. Test it another way. Put it separate the 2 big matches.
Just reverse the order.
Yeah, reverse the order even. Yeah, because Ospreay.
He's going to top it. He's going to top everything.
Yeah, it might have just been as simple as reversing it. It's, it's not. I don't think it's as simple anymore as saying, identifying on these long cards which matches are going to suffer. Because, like I say, I think fans are a bit more. I think they're starting to make the choices. Whether that's going and getting a drink during the Jericho match, or that's spotting which match matters the least and going to the toilet or whatever. I do think now, I just sense it, and I've been at one of these cards where I've made my choices, at Wembley, and you kind of do that. You're going to miss something, so you try and pick your spot a little bit. And I just think there was a little bit of that here.
Picked a good spot.
Yeah,
it's a Mercedes Brit. What a message? Nothing.
I don't know, Jeff.
you were baffled.
I couldn't even tell.
I said, "What's going on?" You went, "I don't know."
I don't know what they were trying to do. One of the worst stadium matches I've ever seen.
This was a bit of a disappointment, truthfully. Vibes count for so much, and when this was in Arlington with a red hot Collision crowd, and those tapings were brilliant, and the wrestlers felt newer and fresher, and the stuff they were doing to each other again had that best in class feel about it. This just this wasn't best in class Lucha, because I feel like I'd seen that earlier in the week, and this wasn't best in class on the night, because no matter, as Sidge points out, whatever you think of Ospreay's style, that was that minutes earlier.
At least they made use of the long ramp, I suppose, with that hologram dive.
Yeah, which is always great.
In AEW's defense, I've missed out something else that happened. There was the lead singer of Nickelback chatting to Orange Cassidy backstage, and there was the return of Swerve Strickland as well, and the tease of him teaming up with MVP and Shelton Benjamin. No Bobby Lashley on this card. We talked about it in the news this morning. I think it's kind of makes sense for AEW, especially considering how this show ended, and with MJF and Cole showing up. It was like they effectively, if you haven't seen this, they decided to hold back. Lashley's coming, but they're holding back on that because it was a rather newsworthy show anyway. Instead, there was a tease of Swerve turning on Nano, but then he said he'd never turn his back on family.
I don't necessarily think this needed to be on pay-per-view, and in fact, if this didn't emanate from Seattle, I don't think it would have. Tacoma, sorry. To quote MJF, who gives a shit? To be honest, I don't mind a breather from this match. The match is finished. I love that. Who cares? There's another match.
Yeah.
That format of the AEW pay-per-view, and before the pancakes, waffles thing happens, I'm not saying, I just want adverts. No, I'm just saying that they could be paced a little bit better. So this didn't need to exist. We'll get to it, probably. I think the physical condition of Bryan Danielson might explain a lot of AEW's booking in the past 2 months. The finish, they didn't want to kill 2 home state stars in one night. It would have been ridiculous, even with Darby winning. So I understand why Bobby Lashley didn't do the big heat beat down, but at the same time, this didn't need to exist realistically.
So it was nice for Swerve. Swerve felt like a massive star. I think like I mentioned on our NXT one last week, Jey Uso came out and did nothing other than endorse Trick Williams. But what a thing for Trick Williams that was. There was nothing else beyond that. This was Swerve Strickland just it almost felt as if the Hangman Page match hadn't happened. It was that here is your hometown hero that made it to the very top, and now he just lives at the top. And
yes.
I think they're more in our sense that like Swerve continues to fight for that because he understands how precarious that spot is in wrestling, and how, especially when you haven't got the belt, how easy it is to just be considered, yeah, you had your turn in the main event, off you slide back down the card. It's as stacked as it's ever been in AEW for like those places. So I think on those terms, it was good as an actual segment. Once Swerve had his hometown pop, generated an awesome response for Defy. You could tell that people felt it and meant it. Like, it did feel a little bit empty at the end, watching them lay out what's presumably going to be a Dynamite match with Shelton.
I'm still excited about the broad direction of the Hurt Syndicate.
There was, we were talking about this as well on the news. Brief tease with new All Elite signing, previous All Elite signing as well, Leo Rush, announcing backstage that he's All Elite again, and then MVP and Shelton came in and sort of barged in through his interview. So I'm slightly concerned that Leo Rush is going to be sacrificed to Bobby Lashley this week as well.
Oh man, Lashley.
Lashley.
Show the glutes.
Speaking of hometown heroes,
I want to be a cowboy, baby.
can't wait to bring that back.
I know.
By the way, hi to Jeff Raidmaker in the chat. Just caught my eye. This Jeff says, "Hello, legends. Just checking in to note that lick a tit or whatever has now become common between my wife and I. Thanks, Sid."
Brilliant.
You're welcome.
Darby Allin, Brody King.
You've got an easy job today, brother.
Yeah.
I thought this was very, very, very good. Probably necessary. Darby did need that win. Some of the bumps in here were horrific. Like,
Oh my God.
neck first, head first, avalanche Germans. Like, they put a shift in. I'm glad it didn't go longer.
Good, they're mates, innit?
Yeah, absolutely. Rushed build. Really, really good match. It's not going to be remembered in any match of the year conversations, but again, this is more almost Leveckian booking from Tony Khan of, we need to do some basics here. Darby Allin is going to go for the title, needs to beat a monster, needs to have a really good match, he needs to look like a star in front of his home state, while seemingly inessential, doing this is essential over and over and over again.
And they hammered home the fact he's now only just pinned him.
Yeah.
It was a nice touch, I thought.
Right result. Good booking-ish by the end. End justified the means sort of stuff. I wasn't electrified by it. I think they've got better in them. But again, like, I think it was a good bit of actual maintenance booking. To have this, it went as long as it did. It's going to just gradually, gently keep Darby ticking over ahead of a massive year for him next year, it would seem. And I had a really good time with some of the bumps. I just wasn't...
Winced at the stair spots.
Oh, God. Aye.
The Darby Allin match bar is just through the roof, isn't it? I think that's the thing. Like, I thought this was, like, on the night, I think this was quite essential booking for Darby Allin. And as a result, you can almost excuse that this isn't on the high end of his matches. But sometimes he pulls those ones out when there's absolutely nothing going into it. If anything, this was subtraction by addition, because none of us had really liked the stuff that got us here. You know, the open challenge into the beatdown, into the stuff with the Rock, like, and then the thing he used to attack him with as well. Like, it was just, like I said, needless trash. Had this have been Darby Allin coming out to cut a promo saying, like, I'm going to be looking on, I've lost my title shot, and then Brody King attacks him, and they have an impromptu match, I think it would have peaked higher. But he just doesn't, because he doesn't have bad matches. Darby Allin doesn't have bad matches. But to see him presented like this, knowing what we'd get later on, I think it was just essential to the character. It's all eyes on him now, like all eyes on Darby Allin, because there's been a few cases where some of his big matches, like his matches without Sting especially, haven't had the most convincing setups. But he's going into that role. He deserves it. He warrants it. He's worthy of it. Like, I hope between him and whoever helps him creatively, they figure out how to do, like, Darby Allin TV build-up segments, because this is not the first time where even, like...
TV time with Darby Allin. Chris Jericho next, maybe.
It's disgusting to even think about.
Hey, you said he's a hot property, so...
Yep, that's happening. I didn't even consider that.
Please,
until now,
God, no.
Nope, that's definitely happening. Jericho will steal his spiky jacket. And Darby Allin have to get it back.
Funny skateboard spot there.
Yep.
Didn't he do that before?
They've had a match, when Chris Jericho was actually
still had it.
That was bad, yeah. He's a shockwave early on.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
But yeah, like you say, inessential, but also I get why they did it, Right, let's talk about the tag team title match. Young Bucks versus Private Party. Nice. I really like me and Andy were talking about this morning as well. The Amazing Red build thing. And I went into this going, I don't really care. I kind of hope the Young Bucks win, if anything. And then I really got kind of sucked into biting on some of the near falls towards the end. And reports are that there were people backstage saying Private Party should have gone over here.
Well, they were wrong, completely and utterly wrong.
That's bad. Actually. I thought I knew the answer, but yeah.
Completely, utterly wrong. You needed this match to happen and the finish and the result of this match to happen before you could even think of putting Private Party in that spot. We talked about it on the preview. I reckon it would have been grossly unfair to Private Party with how over they're not right now to just put the tag team titles on them, because you're instantly just making them work from underneath to try and make something of those belts. Like, I'm 39.
We're on our 30s.
We're on our 30s, fact. I grew up in a different time, and it always used to just strike me as odd and desperate when years later and the business had gone in the friggin' bin. And thank you, AEW, because this 8 years ago I'd have been doing absolute cartwheels over it. It's just, you have to be over to win a belt. It should be the absolute minimum requirement. It's the case in WWE now, right? It should be the case in AEW. It should have been the case in AEW all along. They've rarely deviated from that, to be fair. And they've done it a few times, yes, but they can't make a habit of it, and you can't do it because it's bad. Here's the thing about this match, right? I don't think the execution was phenomenal. I would use that word to describe the layout and what they were trying to achieve and the structure. If you cast your mind back to, could you use a favor while I'm waffling on, right? Could you work out how many days ago Jon Moxley smashed Zay in the hand? Well,
Okay.
please do that. Please do that for me, because I'll be talking a while for this, right? Say it was 25 days, right? Private Party weren't even considered good enough for the gauntlet. And I'm not excusing all of this booking, by the way. It was horrendous, and I had a right rant about it on the preview, and I still stand by it, right? To go from that, to go from Private Party are doing nothing, losing on Rampage most of the year, to Private Party aren't even entered in the Casino Tag Team Gauntlet, and the Righteous were. Private Party are chosen to be emblematic of AEW's failings in the minds of Jon Moxley and the new BCC of, well, someone needs to take over, and I don't necessarily like this either. Someone needs to reshape AEW in the image it should be shaped in, because look at these stupid day oneers in the exact same spot as you were this time 5 years ago, right? To go from all of that into Tacoma, into WrestleDream, when you've seen Hangman Page, and you've seen Willow Nightingale, and you've seen Darby Allin, and you've seen the Beast Mortos, and you've seen Will Ospreay and Takeshita. You've seen some of the best wrestlers in the world, some of the most over wrestlers in the world, and you've seen the match, and the crowd are burned out. And you've seen Swerve as well. To go from that level of build, a pathetic build, to that tired crowd. How many days ago was it?
26 days. 18th of September, Dynamite.
18th of September, 26 days ago, Private Party probably had their, Jesus Christ, what an absolute pair of jabronis these guys are, you know?
Yeah.
To go from that to a pretty loud, resounding, sustained chant of Private Party with zero help from the booking, which was so transparent as to be insulting. Phenomenal layout. Absolutely phenomenal layout. And I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to tell, really, what goes into what, who's responsible for what in pro wrestling. You know what we should have? Unions and people getting credited, but it's a podcast for another day. The Young Bucks basically do their own matches, and every wrestler will say, have the best match of the Young Bucks, because they just kind of, I'm not saying they did it for them. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm not suggesting that Private Party didn't have input. But people talk about the Young Bucks like they're finished. Look at this. I would almost like a complete triumph over delivery, because now the conversation can actually begin in earnest. We can have standards. We don't have to pretend. We can actually say now, right, that's the starting point. Don't mess it up from here. You've now, through an absolutely incredible layout, I'm going to get to why I'm not saying match imminently, from an incredible layout, we've now reached a point where people are actually prepared to start taking Private Party seriously as potential tag team champions. This match wasn't so great in the execution that it has that vibe of All Out 2022 with the Acclaimed, where they were just so awesome in that match. And it felt like call an audible right now. I don't think it was that good. But some people did. Even if it did, they could have a series of matches. Private Party could have a storyline that's patient and isn't 6 months of actual character progression sort of squashed into 3 weeks. The hard work could, and in fact, on the basis of this and the fact that there's now else going on in that tag team division, should start now.
Stokely was there as well, plotting.
Yeah. Look, the play for me would be, I know it's another failed Stokely Hathaway act, but maybe there's a common denominator there, and that's another conversation. I would have Private Party associate with Stokely and then realize, nah, we can do this on our own. And a feel-good babyface win. Why I keep saying layout is because there was some excellent work in this match, but there are certain bad habits. Private Party, you got to give them belts and them get over. How long have we been doing this? Were you born yesterday? Not how it works. They've got some flaws in their act that they need to iron out. Yesterday, ideally, but going forward would be great. Like, the silly string looks terrible. I don't know if it always looked terrible, but I was really charmed by Private Party early, so maybe it had a bit of like latitude towards it. Increasingly, it just looks so slow and cooperative, and it's sort of, when you see the odd sequence, and there was a few in this match, if it looks as bad as the bad faith grifters insist that it always did, stop doing it and just try and move on. What I loved about this was the Young Bucks always find an extra 3 minutes. Thought Zay in this match was outrageous, by the way. I thought he was excellent. Quen, not so much, but he had a really bad injury, so I'm trying to be nice. They did the mirror of the first match's finish and then did another, 3 or 4 minutes where you thought, oh, God. Because you thought that roll-up, kick-out was it was time. The Young Bucks always find 3 minutes of that swelling belief of, oh, my God, they're going to change the titles or they're going to lose, or the result's going to go this way. It didn't, and I'm glad it didn't. Absolutely phenomenal layout. The Young Bucks are better at booking in the ring than the vast majority of bookers are with a pencil. This is so close to being great, and I think greatness is possible, but the real work must start now.
It was the missed BT trigger for me. Or the clatter knees where you the one last hope spot was like,
because they've had quite a few matches, haven't they, where they've done one kick out and then they've just done a second and won it, and you're like, okay. Then when they miss that, you're like,
and that's chance. You know, none of that's by accident, is it?
They want you to want it.
Yeah, those thoughts are going through your head. Of all the sort of outcomes from this match, which I did think was drab for large portions, truthfully, but of all the outcomes I wouldn't have expected, considering the pretty bad build and it was
atrocious, mate.
What it was asking you.
We buried it on the preview, didn't we?
What this was asking of you. It's quite something that, and it's not like just a carry job, far from it, but it's interesting that 5 years apart, the Young Bucks have tried to make Private Party. What that says about what's happened in that 5 years is both an indictment of AEW and of Private Party. And equally, both times that the Young Bucks have attempted to help them make them, it's also a credit to Private Party for appearing that they can actually level up. But that's happened.
They really start to grow into it by the finish.
That's happened twice now, and it's just strange that's happened 5 years apart. The Swerve in Our Glory Acclaimed comparison crossed my mind as well, in that it turned out really probably for the best that the title change happened when it did rather than mid-match. They feel ready for dethroning the Young Bucks, having just lost to the Young Bucks.
Yes.
And it's how we get there now that should be part of the fun. You know, because if you watch all this and you get the Amazing Red thing and you get the Young Bucks saying you guys are losers and then they just beat them, traditionally, that is like a straight up burial, but nothing the Young Bucks do is ever traditional. And they will be thinking about being able to sort of revisit this or tell the story in a different way. And they do, like Private Party, feel exponentially more ready for this role than they did before the match actually took place. That doesn't happen very often in wrestling.
I want it to feel earned. Like, I don't want Tony Schiavone to say, oh, well, they beat the Iron Savages. They're going to win the titles. And Brother Zay's delivery was excellent. just call him Zay because Matt Hardy mercifully no longer exists, right? Zay's delivery was excellent, but the words, I just could not take them seriously at all.
Yeah.
Your characters aren't ready. Like,
We ran through their cage match, didn't we?
Yeah, who've you ever beat, you know? It's essential that they start really rebuilding that tag team division. They've given themselves an unreal platform on the basis of this.
Yeah, I'll be honest. If you'd have said to me on Thursday when we were previewing this, after the match finishes and they lose, you're going to be really worried that Isaiah Cassidy's about to turn on Mark Quinn and be actually bothered by it. I'd have gone, no chance. But when he's doing the gutted and then he just let Mark Quinn go ahead of him, I thought, he's going to snatch him up and take him out here. For some reason, it's Mark Quinn's fault that they've lost, but no. Yeah,
I want to know more about them. I want to start believing in them. I want
Yeah.
to start taking them seriously. Put it this way, if 2 weeks ago, it was like on Twitter, private party or in a match on Dynamite, I would have went, oh, God, whatever. This time I'm actually starting to look for it. I'll actually be disappointed if they're not going to be on Dynamite this week.
Because that's the original DIY formula, isn't it? You were rooting for them to win the titles and just to stress that they were going to split up. And they could run with that potentially and get them all the way to like the team that has just come into my mind as a result of that comparison is FTR. But a match like that where it feels like this is high stakes, the winners here will get a deserved shot at the Young Bucks or at the belts.
Oh, yeah, put the belts on the outrunners first and foremost. But other than that.
And then they win that match. And at this point, they have really started to assemble several credible matches, and you're left with a memory of how close they came this time. It's potentially really great, sort of like reinvigorating the tag division sort of booking. They've just got to follow it through.
For my sins, I completely forgot the match that came next in terms of I'm looking at the time left on Sunday. God, Jesus, they've given Mox Danielson a bit of time here. Like, what the hell's going on? I mean, they were given plenty of time anyway. And then I was like, oh, yeah, Chris Jericho. Forgetting him. It was Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe for the ROH World title. We thought Jericho might nick this one, but a great fire-up spot from Mark Briscoe at the end.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 minutes too long, especially for the position in the card. But they told a very, very simple pro wrestling story, one that some people didn't like going into it. It's pro wrestling. I think you're going to have to deal with it from now on. And as cheap as it was in the build, it's still pro wrestling. That's what it's a cheap medium. I thought they couldn't have done a better job, all things considered, of telling that story in the ring. Maybe at the commentary desk, like, come on, you should know what the underhook means if you're commentating on a match involving Mark Briscoe. I'm sorry, you should. But there's something about Jericho. Every now and then he'll just dial in and click. And I thought he was on really good form, and Mark Briscoe is absolutely eternal. Just the little things of how he sets up the Lion Tamer. When you know he's on form, it never feels like this really clunky, like this laboured, sluggish Jericho that we see far too often, especially for a spot on the card in 2023 and 2024. A lot of 2022, actually, come to think about it. But particularly the last 18 months, his ring work has declined insignificantly. He does that Toby Keith thing sometimes, and I think WrestleDream was one of those times. And Mark Briscoe's facial expressions were wonderful. Like, there's obviously an emotion that's going to exist there forever. Like, unfortunately for Mark Briscoe, but I mean, his facials were incredible in the last 2 minutes of this match. That sense of, no, you can't do that. I'll show you how to do it. I just felt something that I kind of knew I was going to. And there's a time when there's an expectation of a Jericho match and the execution of a Jericho match. And just because Chris Jericho's in it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad or forgettable or it shouldn't exist. He gave Mark Briscoe, and Mark Briscoe gave himself, obviously, a really nice win in a key slot on a pay-per-view. And it was effective.
I think Mark Briscoe is such a great, valiant loser to Mox as world champion.
He could beat him in another timeline. He's the best, man.
Yeah, it's like a good straight-up win for Mark Briscoe in the same way it was an interesting straight-up loss for Chris Jericho. As a result, it's one of the ways I think like you in that, when you're sort of conspiratorial, it's like, I'm now suspicious of what Jericho gets back in return for this.
It probably must continue.
I watched this and I think that was, all things considered, a fine bit of business. Thank you for that job, Mr. Jericho. And on we move. What's the catch? It's Chris Jericho. What's the catch? What deal have you made now? What are you getting out of this that's going to ruin next week's Dynamite?
Darby.
Yeah.
I'm really worried.
He really sold me
into existence.
Yeah, he really sold me on that.
Anything else you want to talk about? I'm trying to put off talking about this main event.
To be honest, right, I'm going to put my hands up. I've got very little to say in terms of eulogizing Danielson's career. I feel like I've been eulogizing his career and glorifying him for the past 3 years. So I've not got much to add upon his career. I've got that denial stage. It doesn't feel real to us yet. It genuinely doesn't feel real to me yet that my joint favorite wrestler of all time, and he's a wrestler as well, let's be clear.
Yes.
He is a wrestler, has retired, air quotes, he's a wrestler from full-time competition. I believe now that he has, but in the back of your head, the wrestlers, he says himself he's going to come back at some point. But if you look at this run, it'll only become apparent when Dynamite stinks again in 5 weeks, or has like a rubbish episode, and then it just doesn't feel like it's back. Then you think, has the quality of wrestling gone down as well? Is that pay-per-view really as good as Dynasty 2024 or whatever? Right, I'm going to get the acceptance in a sort of brutal fashion in about 6 months' time. For now, I just watched it. I was like, I didn't feel anything because they effectively orchestrated, in me anyway, the sense of denial.
I think I'm at the bargaining stage right now because, we knew this was coming. We knew it was coming arguably before All In. There was an argument to be made that he doesn't win it there and then he just disappears. That's it. But the moment he won the title, the clock was counting down and we were sat there. And I was with Usage going, with Christian Cage with that title shot, probably won't lose, so it'll be fine. Be fine on Saturday. He'll probably won't lose. So there's that. And then the match happens, and they're mentioning the atrophy of one of his arms in there, and I'm like, but he can still go probably to the end of the year, probably start next year if anything. We're gonna keep start the year off right, and then the road to like Double or Nothing. Probably Double or Nothing is probably the big one you want to get to. And then this happens, and he loses, and they have everything that happens afterwards, and I go. Yeah, I obviously have to do that to sort of write him off. He's going to have to go and get neck surgery. He talked about that. But, part-time, what's part-time? Part-time can be anything. And part-time could be like 26 weeks of the year on 52. As I say, every other week, basically, it's probably going to be there.
We have part-timers in this office.
Right, we're talking all around it. Let's talk Mox Danielson.
I won't be holiday shamed. Fuck off.
AEW World Title. It's sort of weird to sort of talk about the match because so much centers around the finish and then the post-match, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Truthfully, this wasn't Bryan Danielson's best match in AEW by a long stretch for me. It was more effective than great. I think it hit on a more deep emotional level, and in terms of like a work of fictional drama, you definitely got the feeling throughout. Maybe there was an element of work. Danielson, the end. He's not winning this match. He doesn't look like the same guy he was even at All In, which takes on such how on earth you add an extra layer to that. Maybe he did fight with his daughter, cheering him on because the Perry match was good in a way. It was probably hard not to look like the fresher of the two out of him and McGuinness. But that Carter match was pretty bad by their expectations even. And I was just watching it going, this is going one way. I don't know if they were sort of like really cleverly manipulating that feeling. Some of Moxley's very deliberate, methodical control sequences, which, I know this is a tangent, that's going to be a bit of a challenge on pay-per-view if he's going to have this title for a long time, which he probably should, to really make that Darby Allin elevation. All of which is to say that I was a little bit bored, and it was a little bit, I don't know if they were just very much sort of cultivating this feeling of doom throughout. And like, it wasn't like the ultimate fire from Danielson. He just wrestled like a broken, defeated man, basically from the start of, I've taken on one too many defenses. I'm dead, but I don't want to show that I'm dead yet, but I'm doomed. I'm absolutely, it just felt like, it felt like my hero, like limping towards his doom in a very engrossing and unsettling way. I know it's just weird. It's the second consecutive AEW pay-per-view where the main event doesn't feel like a wrestling match so much as a vibe that they're trying to engineer. And it's one of those where it only becomes really impressive almost after the fact, where the actual experience is so not how your brain's wired to receive professional wrestling and the spectacle and the bombast. Do you know what I mean by that?
I agree. I didn't get a lot out. I love the post-match. Loved the angle. Love the finish, actually. It was a real...
The finish was great.
Real tragedy to that kind of, like, that sort of loss. I was trying to... I don't think I'm going to miss Danielson as much as a lot of other people, in truth, and it's nothing... It's obviously...
You don't review Collision. You watch Bryan Danielson versus Shane Taylor, and you think, well, thank God for Collision, because Danielson can do that. And then you watch it when Danielson was sensibly kind of taken off that show a bit. It'll be felt. His absence will be felt, trust me.
I sense that Danielson, he is the best of them, but I sense that if you were to lift anybody out of AEW at the moment, who's like one of the best in their field, Danielson's the type you can get away with. He's a 10. He's a 10. But of all the things he's amazing at, they've got 9s, loads of them. And we talk about it.
I just want to say it's the most baffling thing I've ever heard, and I disagree with it completely. But I'll let him talk.
I've mentioned it with WWE these days. So many stars. Doesn't matter how good they are at wrestling. There's so many stars that you lift a star out and now there's 10 more stars there. So it's okay. You can fill that time. Danielson's matches to me are the things that are easiest to plug in AEW right now. Will Ospreay does it, right? On their best day, and they've done it very recently. The Young Bucks have done it. The what I want out there. Swerve Strickland has done it this year, more than Bryan Danielson for me this year, truthfully. I think he's the best wrestler in AEW this year as an all-rounder. I think and none of them are him. None of Kenny Omega is maybe him. None of them are him, other than Bryan Danielson. But there's some that run 2024 him close enough that it'll be fine until he's back. The retirement never hit for me, truthfully, because there's the part-time element of it. So I've never, and this is not me saying this now. I'm not trying to be contrarian. Go back and listen to every single time we talk. A, he's lying. B, part-time is what in 2025, 2026?
Your schedule?
It's your standard wrestler schedule. Look at everybody's cage matches now. Nobody works there like 400 days a year, brother. Nobody anymore. Okay. Like Danielson could work what would be considered. I just didn't feel this like, oh God, why? It wasn't the Undertaker streak ending. I don't even like the Dave Man. It was like, but they curated the very same atmosphere, like that. The bell rings or the finish takes place. And you're like, what? Like that is hard to
you
come
give
by.
the Cole Palmer, isn't there?
That's the
Well,
that's
Jimmy Chips.
really hard to arrive at that, and you don't get that very often. So that's the measure of who Bryan Danielson is.
Great self from Bryce, by the way. I've got a call for it. It's the rest of the rules, but I can't believe.
Like Brian's.
What's the turtle? What's the phrase called? Surrender turtle, is it?
Surrender Cobra.
Surrender Cobra, thank you.
Like,
I've got turtle from. One of them.
Brian, like both of his arms went at the same, rather than doing like the 3 count or anything cheesy, like his arm just
that's total Mox. Well, totally them.
He flopped, and it was like, I have to do it now, and it was heartbreaking. It wasn't. It's just like it's that moment of realization is very impressive to get. Sid just said it, but the vibe, same as the second half, especially of Swerve and Hangman in the cage, it's just this like. Oh,
I don't like watching AEW pay-per-views anymore.
But I love that they're able to curate this, and then in the post-match the same. Like this is great wrestling heat, and I saw a lot of people, older people, like we're all in our 30s, fact, but some people online act as if they're in the 50s. They're so fucking miserable. Like, stop shouting at young people for the wrestling they enjoy versus the stuff they don't. It's for everybody, whether you like it or not. You'll say it's for everybody when it works for you, but when some people would say, I just wanted a happy ending, apparently it's not for you anymore. Right? Make your mind up. Like, I get that complaint, and people are entitled to that complaint. That is rooted in a love for Bryan Danielson. Like, that's rooted in them investing in the kayfabe. The problem is, can you now get people to hate heels for being heels? Or do you or is like kayfabe so irreversibly destroyed that you can't embrace the fiction?
I've never hated Marina Shafir more than during this match.
Then this was effective. Do you know, that's what this is all.
I don't know her, so, I
know her. I know her.
That's what this is trying to achieve. Can you despise these heels in the way that you're supposed to despise them in the fiction? Or are you just like too wrapped in how all of it's ultimately real, and Danielson got the retirement he wanted? He wanted the bow out for now that he would have wanted, because this is always how he would have wanted to go out. I think it's like I don't think it's resonated with me in the way that it did with others, but I absolutely loved the establishment of this group. Like, I think they've done a fantastic job of how they've established this group in the post-match, and the potential baby faces to stop them. This feels so much better and organic a wrestling story than we've got to do this for the good of AEW. The soul of it. No, these These are bastards.
They're kind of doing it.
I don't think they are. Like, I know Moxley keeps saying it. Like
Darby keeps saying it.
Like, I like the lack of ceremony around Moxley holding up the belt. I want to believe that it's gone in that little sack because it's getting handed over to somebody. That there's still there's like greater power is these cursed words, but there's something else still lurking behind this that we don't yet know. And what that closing shot at the end was fantastic. Like, there's Darby, there's Hook, there's Orange Cassidy, there's Daniel Garcia. Put your faith in these people. Not to fight for the soul of AEW, but to win the belt and beat the baddies. I really bought into that. They've
been talking about the soul of AEW for too long for me to start instantly thinking that's not going to be the case. In terms of the vibe, great. You need to build people on the back of this. This is, if it all works out, and it probably will, people are going to be with Darby for a long time.
Yes.
This is exponentially, infinitely more effective than having Chris Jericho just lose to somebody. This is a rub. This is Bryan Danielson creating this really harrowing scene, with the idea being that Darby's going to avenge him and Darby's going to be here hopefully for the next 5 years and whatever. In terms of, I don't want to get too wrapped up in the conversation of should they have done it or not, or should happy endings or whatever, because it almost feels like a response to Backlash. Here's what they did. Let's analyze it on its own terms.
Yes.
With a degree of analytical skill. I thought they did a genuinely, really remarkable job of selling it. It could have felt so hokey. It was so easy to suspend your disbelief. And I thought they did a wonderful job of establishing this very, very real shock and somber mood, and then using some pretty unsettling imagery and Danielson barely moving just to capitalize, nay, exploit how people were feeling that gut punch of, is he okay? I've seen a million stretcher jobs, but because you had that mood first by the finish, the actual execution of which was sublime, I think it's the old wrestling thing of, if you tell the truth with A, they'll believe the lie for B, yeah? It was like that mood was so, it's kind of over, or this is the way he's going out. And
Yutta's turn helped.
I knew you was a bastard. I bloody knew it.
Stripped away the hope.
Yeah.
Because you'd watched him scream and cry at the last time this happened, and he's like, oh, well, if he's in, we're all knackered.
And then you see the stretcher job, and then I think Danielson, maybe it is a build-up, he just wants to go home, but maybe he phoned in the Okada match because he's a genius who thinks of the long game. But that interview with was it Sports Illustrated, of it's got shooting pains on my arms, I couldn't turn my hips over. It kind of explains the Okada match maybe more than just the lack of chemistry that they have. And the idea, he's always done it. My body's broken. I'm just great, so I can get through it. That idea at the very end was, oh God, he is broken. And so is my heart.
Lots of comments and questions to get to, so I'll try and fly through these as much as I can. Shout out to Dan the Grappler, by the way, just on this. I thought I wanted to mention it now. He says, main event was a hard watch. I noticed during Danielson's entrance that he was holding back tears on the ramp. That ensuing match was harrowing, intense, and a beautiful send-off to the greatest wrestler ever. Moxley is inevitable. And hi to...
Moxley's a complete 180 reversal, by the way. If nothing else, if there's not going to be a Danielson, people have missed Moxley more than I realised. So it's a great thing for him that this happened in the way it did.
Nice to feel passionately just about his work again, isn't it? Yeah.
Would love to know if anyone got that spare ticket from Larry Robb, by the way. Do let us know in the comments if that's the case. Mr. Twilly says, howdy guys, I flew out to WrestleDream to watch Danielson. The match was such a bittersweet experience. Still glad I went there. Yeah,
it's one of those where only after the fact will you be grateful that you went.
Matt Rains in the chat says... this is a long time ago, but thank you for waiting around for me to get to these. It says, happy Monday, brothers. Thoroughly enjoyed the majority of this show. My brain still can't comprehend what happened in that three-way match, and the ending was a very Danielson way to go out. Cheers, guys. Cheers to you, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Karthik says, when WWE does a major turn now, the character's development plays out on screen and it's justified from that character's moral compass. Their creative team is running circles around everyone else at the moment. Sort of the ongoing discussion around the changes within AEW creative. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. For the better part of 2 years now, I keep talking about show Bibles and storyboards and character profiles. It does feel like that's the stuff that's thought through the most. Ultimately, this is not perfect, obviously, and I think sometimes, and we've said this before, you still do have to have a little bit of a window to react to things as well. Sometimes people will get over, and it's how you pivot, truthfully, a lot of the time, because sometimes you have to gauge how over is somebody really getting for us to go back on this, maybe like this longer term story we're telling, or like Drew McIntyre's character in 2023 needed somebody like, now in hindsight, a year on, we can say, well, the best thing for that character to feel like it was going to become a main event character was to get a CM Punk, but that character started developing in September, and Punk signed his contract on the night of the Survivor Series. So it would have needed to be somebody else, and would it have really been elevated? So there are times where you've got to pivot, and that's probably hard when you're crafting out months and months of stories. I don't know if this is in relation to anything in WrestleDream, but like, I think it's something like the Yuta heel turn is one that I think they can do a good and subtle job of explaining. First with the Danielson celebrating while he's in pain in the ring, shot from Dynamite. That feels like that's a part of it, you know, when they'd ran them off at the end of Dynamite. But also just about like Moxley as the brutal reality, like, is put over almost by you just accepting it. Like him looking at the lay of the land and thinking, you know what, I'm backing the wrong horse here. Like, I think there's ways to. I don't think that's what Karthik was speaking in relation to there, because I do think, WWE hand and heel, babyface turns, character progression way better than AEW right now. But there's an example of a turn that I think you could really do some fun stuff with. And Hangman's been one of the best things this year. So
on the Jimmy Jacobs thing, Matt Rains also says, just curious, how much of that Jimmy Jacobs list do you guys believe?
Look, I don't know about the Okada thing. And it'll be remiss of me not to say that Ibu of Wrestle Purists has come out and said that he was misquoted or misrepresented by the aggregation, and that was an aggregated list of his thoughts. I can 100% believe that Jimmy Jacobs, who Bryan Danielson just said, I worked with him. He's really good. He could help you out. And then he grew an influence to a ridiculous level. If you look at everything that if you've ever heard him in interviews and you're aware of what he was responsible for in WWE and indeed in Impact, and if you look at his stuff in Ring of Honor, he wasn't a boots and trunks guy. He always had these sort of outlandish ideas. I don't think he was ever a good fit for AEW. I can absolutely see, because that was one that stuck out for me. If he doesn't buy into the original vision, how's he got so high up? If you look at everything he's been credited with or talked about doing, he probably did look at AEW and go, sports, that's boring. I mean, the guy was a zombie princess. You know what I mean? Everything I've heard about Jimmy Jacobs is that he's a fantastically easy dude to get along with. And maybe that allows him, I'm not saying he's a manipulative guy or whatever, but maybe that allows him to get into these positions in the two big US companies in TNA.
Just a nice comment here from Michael Laverley. Says, morning guys, hope everyone's doing good. Hope you are too. Hope everything's Laverley with you, Michael.
Great first name.
Also, hi to Jack Cypher, who says, hey guys, long time listener, all the way from good old Australia. Never been able to sync times up to catch one of these live, but welcoming my second kid 3 weeks ago. Doing work and studying, it's finally caused our schedules to sync up. Congratulations for all of us here at WhatCulture, Jack.
Congratulations.
Just want to send you guys some love. Huge fan of you three. You've been brightening my week for a couple of years now. I'll send you all the most positive vibes to you three legends. Keep being you and never change for anyone. Thank you, Jack.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations to you and your family. Steve Nicholas joins us. I can't remember how to say his surname. So apologies, Steve. Says, g'day, lick a tit or whatever, boys. Considering how bad the ratings for Dynamite were, and there isn't a Baron Corbin. There isn't a Baron Corbin to blame. What is to blame? Different nights, two women's matches. Yeah. It's Alex Abrantes.
I think convergence of many factors. Tony Khan has made every single mistake that a booker makes. And the infuriating part is that AEW was founded on the idea of, they make so many bloody mistakes. We're not going to do that. Where the learned, not in the bubble guys, we bloody spent our formative years burying WCW for these mistakes that we'll never make. Smash cut to copying WWE's homework, which is the big mistake WCW made, introducing too many titles, just every stupid dumb thing that a wrestling promoter, like just ruining finishes and just whatever. It's a mess. They made a mess and people no longer trust them to tidy it up. And I tell you what's another big thing about the ratings drop is the total lack of belief in turning it around. You can't just do stuff, which you've done. You can't just say stuff either. Wrestling fans are smarter to that. Considering that they love to be conned, they can spot a bad one. The tunnels are back. The rankings are coming back for a week. Or if you mess up after
the
that,
referees for a week.
Yeah, if you mess up after your big, we've recognised the problems, it becomes a boy who cried wolf situation. And doing that risible Young Bucks EVP Tony Khan angle after you'd restored the feeling. We're going to bring in authority figures and do a war for AEW Soul after that. On that, sorry. So I think that's the reason, realistically, they've made every single mistake and they've broke the trust and the belief of the fan base. It's more of a long-form written answer, really, but that's the best I can do on the spot. Is this new BCC versus Darby et al. Feud not a better version of main event Mafia versus Frontline? And has this stuff ever worked? Has this stuff ever worked?
But could you counter that by saying that this is inner circle elite? In terms of having a guy that really believes he should run this place and be acknowledged as being the top guy, has got the belt now, Jon Moxley in the Chris Jericho spot.
For me, with Jericho, go on, sorry.
No, I just thinking, because that is obviously a devastating example. Yeah. Millionaires Club New Blood was another terrible run at it. Any interfactional bit of the invasion fails more than it ever succeeds. But there was a time when Stable Wars and AEW were kind of what made it fascinating. And
it is, but then it was all wrapped up in a lot of other personal conflict as well. Like Cody, Chris Jericho just felt in a weird, more vague way, I suppose, just about the belt and how to represent the championship.
Yeah.
And I think Cody's big stip was a huge part of that as well. And it overlapped with some proper grudge stuff with Moxley and Omega, who were basically duking it out to be just the alpha of the promotion, not for its values, just... this is a place to work and I'm going to be the best at it because I'm a competitive guy. It just felt different. I think if you go back and watch it now, yes, there was the Ellis Island promo. And it just felt a little bit more in the subtext of what they were doing as opposed to AEW this, AEW just feels so much more blunt and on the nose now.
I think, is that not a great example of what we were just describing as well? Like the faith takes so much longer to restore.
Yeah.
Like after, All In and All Out were great, and then a bit of a turkey of a Dynamite, and you're like, they're never going to get this back. Yeah. And then you get this story. If this was like a year into what had been a year of restorative sort of booking, you'd be way more on the hook for it. You'd trust it playing out the way you want to a lot more, wouldn't you? The Darby Allin thing for me, it's still, Jon Moxley said it weeks ago, you will never win the title. And then he took his shot off him. And it was that moment where I was like, great, Darby Allin's beating Jon Moxley. I want to see, if nothing else, I want to see that rewarded with the finish we all want to see, because it shows you that it can still be done at that highest level for the biggest prize.
On that topic, Richard C says Darby overcame one mountain. How long to beat Mox?
I think Moxley is he was a proper needle mover back when the needle moved. And he's one of the top stars. You kind of want to keep him sweet politically. Political, creative. People don't get it, but they're on equal footing. When's All in Texas?
August. Round what?
I think it's July, actually.
Is it?
That'd be the earliest I would do it.
You're right. Saturday, 12th of July.
The earliest I would do it.
Arlington, Texas. Yeah.
Because otherwise, it just becomes the new thing to do for a few months. This is meant to be... If you think of the gravity of the story they're trying to tell, this is meant to be, the complexion of the very company has changed. You can't do that and have any weight to it if it doesn't go a long time. Certain storylines need to be long. Not all of them, for Christ's sake, but certain ones do. This needs to go long, this. They need to put some goddamn effort and thought and some muscle behind this. The big stadium show at the earliest.
It's the right place for some of the goons to be chased off by the Stinger, as well as to help him win the belt.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I don't want to do an Avengers thing, though.
No, just thing.
Mark Lee Willis says, afternoon, gents. One of my bugbears in wrestling is the use of mental health. In IMO, it's lazy, and JR's comments referencing Moxley's character pissed me off. Thoughts?
I think there's a way to do it right and a way to do it wrong. I think I used the phrase, there's a good and bad version of everything. I think Hangman Page's heart was completely in the right place. I didn't think he was being manipulative about his mental health struggles and how they drove his character. So that's a version of it and I think you would agree as well, Mark Lee Willis. I think we might have spoke about it before, especially how anti-toxic it is. And what did JR say about Moxley? I can't recall off the top of my head.
I can't remember that either. He had a bad night.
He had a bad night.
Had a bad night.
He had a bad night.
Jared.
That was bizarre. Like, just ripping the piss out of what's in front of you. Like, he's had really good nights lately. Which is
recently, yeah.
He's had good matches. That's the point. He's not doing the nights, which is good. I just feels like he seems like he's above it all. Jim Ross. And that's reared its ugly head. I can't recall what he said to Mox, but on the evidence of everything else I actually paid attention to, probably bad.
I did sense
he's a different older guy as well. I mean, he's one of those where maybe it is a generational thing. You can't just learn them.
We watch it back in the office because it's sort of inadvertently funny, just the presentation of Kenny Omega and the Undertale thing. Excalibur goes a long way to explain that this is not a debate whether that was the right or wrong thing to do on TV, but Excalibur goes a long way to explaining why Kenny is dressed up as Undertale for Halloween because of the links between where they're at in their careers. And Jim Ross just, is he sick?
Is he sick?
Like, well, I just told you, JR. Like, and Excalibur on this show sounded increasingly frustrated with the things he was having to follow up on.
I will say, Jim Ross or no, and I don't think you can reasonably expect someone of that age to get it. And I'm generally quite pragmatic about this sort of thing. It doesn't really bother me. I'm not saying it shouldn't bother you, but with JR, I would just give up that ghost. I think what's more important and what's maybe better to have perspective on is what AEW thinks about this sort of thing and how they treat it as an entity worth your support. And I would say absolutely their heart's completely in the right place with this sort of thing.
Good record for it.
Yeah.
Another question from Richard C. here. Does Bryan Danielson win the G1 in 2025? And does he beat Mox one-on-one once Mox loses the title or help whoever beats Mox?
Right, here's the thing with Danielson and his return. The G1, I'm sorry, I'd love it, but the ship surely has sailed on that. The ship surely has sailed on that. Probably, surely. I didn't say definitely, mate.
Maybe.
I don't want him to wrestle Jon Moxley again.
Yeah.
I mean, he should. They've had 3 major matches. Revolution 2022, Grand Slam 2022, and this one recently. And I thought one of them was an unqualified ripper. That was the first one. The Grand Slam one had a good 3 minutes tacked on the end of a pretty underwhelming match. And this was a different... I don't know. When Danielson comes back, I think I don't know. It depends how the narrative plays out. But I would just like to see him do some fun stuff that he wants to do.
Yeah, I think you'll get a protracted version of what we've just seen in this speed run title reign.
In a tag, maybe Mox and Pac versus Darby and Danielson after the big title switch as an epilogue.
I'd like him to kick Uta's ass.
Yeah.
They should do the Uta match. I'd much sooner see the Uta match than another match with Moxley.
Yeah.
Eric Vazquez, great first name, says, hello, loves. Konosuke Takeshita is still being pushed as a heel, but he's as over as hell, it seems. So if he hasn't started already, should AEW begin to legitimately transition him to a top babyface?
I actually had a fantasy booking storyline about this, Eric, so strap in. So it's more of an idea than a full-on plotted, mapped-out thing. I think the play here, because you get the best of both worlds, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. One bird that needs to die a harrowing, ugly death is the Don Callis Konosuke Takeshita on-screen partnership. It hasn't worked once, and Takeshita was miles over without him. 2, Konosuke Takeshita, and I've said this a million times, here's one more, is the best wrestler ever to not wrestle frequently for his home promotion. It's ridiculous. Like Misawa, Kobashi, Omega in New Japan, like, Bret Hart in the Fed, they all just wrestle all the time because they're the best wrestlers. This AEW schedule, and it's just so odd how someone like Takeshita, hopefully the course is correcting.
Yeah.
I think the play here is Takeshita wants to prove himself to be a proper fighting champion. He's a bit of a prick, but he's also like a bit of an alpha as well. He's the kind of guy who, when he walks into a bar, his dick's already been there 2 minutes. Those are Don Callis' words, not mine. I think he nicked it off a film, actually, but you get it.
It's wrestling.
It's wrestling. He should be doing a weekly defense. Match. I want to see Konosuke Takeshita wrestle a lot because he's great. Then Callis is like, what you doing, asshole? Well, I've been here with Kenny before. Like, your body will give up on you if you keep doing this. And Takeshita's like, no, I want to be the best. So you get a wonderful run of Takeshita matches, all leading up to his babyface turn and the separation of him and Callis. 2 birds, 1 stone, dead birds.
Yeah, it's Don Callis family, isn't it? Like, this was somewhat of a recovery, but I'd still be absolutely fine if on Wednesday they just dissolved.
What if he lets him go, but he says, you owe me a favour, and then 6 months later he pays back that favour, and then later on they say, don't forget, when you're part of the family.
Yeah.
And I thought you weren't part of the family.
He trades him to Jay Roberts.
Yeah.
With Roosh, he was only ever courted once.
Also, Eric.
That was better than the first 2 years of AEW, wasn't it?
Eric. Also,
It is, though, isn't it?
What's that?
Just saying, when Jimmy Jacobs
Jimmy Jacobs,
apparently, it's rubbish. That's better, isn't it, mate?
Eric says, I mentioned this a few times, even to Miller, it's always sunny in Philadelphia at WhatCulture. I'd pay to see Stax do a kayfabe millionaire with flipping marks. We'll pass it on. I'd get the two of them in a room together.
Yeah.
Might have to be a Patreon-ski thing, that, because I don't think many people will want to see it. But guess what? Niches are good.
Richard C says, Brian Mox, Flair, HBK, Taker, Foley, Triple H, Angle, Corbin is the putting over a young guy an internet myth and is retired the right word for Brian.
I think AEW has established that inadvertently. It is nowhere near as easy as that. It happens because it just happens. A lot of things happen. But it's lightning in a bottle stuff. Like, if this ever works, you have to do the proof of concept, this idea of succession, and make sure for quite a few years that fans are really into the idea. Misawa Kobashi, it worked then, even though they were kind of peers. Cody and Darby, but I think people just wanted to like Darby the whole time. And the fact
there's an opt-in from the fans that already has to be there.
Yeah.
And I think it's portrayed as this magic wand effect, and it doesn't really have that.
No.
Fans have kind of made that choice a while ago in the booking. Ideally, has to be like a little bit behind it, but not that far that they can still illustrate they're ahead of it.
I will say AEW operates almost on a weekly basis as if this is true, and it continues to just bore me into submission.
Mr. Phoenix says, not the biggest AEW fan, the ref assisted pin.
No shit.
Ref assisted pin on the pre-show was a bad omen. I think
it happened in NXT about 4 weeks ago.
I think
I'm not. Do you talk to him? I'm talking to him.
I think it was the Anna Jay Ollie Cameron, which was getting some good praise in the comments earlier on, by the way. Other than that, 3 great matches to start really had me going. Then everything after the Dead Swerve segment was downhill. I feel like the crowd reflected that.
We got back into it. But, Mr. Phoenix, question: what did you make of the finish to Rhea versus Liv at Bad Blood?
He also says legit.
That was more of a fuck up than anything happened at WrestleDream, was it not?
It was. I would agree.
Manga.
Legit respect you guys. He continues. Hang on, let me. Legit respect you guys, especially Sige. It's easy as an NXT guy to take shots at AEW, but for the legit AEW fans, I don't understand what pretending nothing wrong is getting.
I don't think Sige does that either.
No, Sige. I don't think Sige does that.
What was the whole comment there? And who was it from?
Pretending that nothing wrong.
Yeah, Phoenix saying about why does it benefit AEW if AEW fans pretend nothing's wrong?
I don't think it matters. I think it's irrelevant. I think that there are people, the engagement accounts. I'll answer this one because I think it's an alright question, to be fair. There are engagement accounts like Drainmaker and the ilk who will all caps say everything's awesome and great. And if you weren't clear, I've actually capitalized all those words just to make it sure. I think that they will get the odd retweet and stuff. I don't think they are considered the barometer of the opinion. I think Tony Khan will listen to more media who he kind of knows or probably grew up reading or started to read in his late, like Voices of Wrestling, basically. If Voices of Wrestling bully Tony Khan and saying something's terrible, it's their words as opposed to, oh God, isn't this storyline great? I think he'll listen to the media that he kind of respects. If they start to think, oh, it's getting worse, then creative changes will suddenly happen. A Continental Classic will suddenly happen. I don't think he truly listens to those fans who insist everything is great because he has frequently proven himself willing to make changes when the right people sort of nag him. So I don't think the fans pretending nothing's wrong makes a jolt of difference, and it happens in every single media property.
Probably asks the locker room what podcasts or stuff they're listening to get a bit of a barometer on what people say, and then he probably gets this response.
One of the only professional wrestling podcasts that's actually worth a
I mean, folks. Tony Khan listens to The Undertaker's podcast. He's got some good ideas, that guy.
He's busy listening to Hawk Tour at the moment. Talk to her. Kevin Flannery says the three-way was great fun. Slight gripe with the camera angle at the finish, which showed for the second time Takeshita's knee made zero contact with the head. I loved that three-way. Really, really enjoyed it. And I'm just really happy that Takeshita's champion. I've got to be honest. Mm-hmm. We went in saying, well, maybe they'll do a title switch here, and I'm really glad they did. But however they got there.
If I'm Takeshita, right, the knee, he used to do the... like knee is his finish. He often does. I don't think it's ever looked that great. If he can find, he's got that V-trigger hidden blade. How have you not killed someone? His forearm. If he can work out a way to really emphasize that forearm that he does. I know he does it and it's great. It doesn't have the same dramatic effect of the hidden blade or the V-trigger where it's like the move that makes you pretty close to defeat. If he can sort of rethink that and sort of start to do it deeper into the matches as a proper difference maker, like an equalizer, as opposed to this awesome thing that he just does early in his matches, that would look better than the knee. I think that's a better finish.
John Catter, and I will preface this by saying, he later replied saying, I really want to love AEW, but they make it hard. John says, how long before AEW screw up Mox's new crew? Every time I start to invest in something, they kill it, and how long before they reveal what's going on? I think that's from a good place of good faith.
Yeah, and that's an answer to the question posed earlier. Yeah. They've lost that trust. They've made too many false dawns, and it's like, it's nowhere near as bad as WWE in the early to late 2010s and 2000s. They would often have this, right? Well, no, it's all going to change. It's all going to change. And then it didn't.
Yep.
And then, we'll push this guy. Go on, little pricks. We'll do it. It's not as mean-spirited as their, go on then, we'll bloody do it. But that became hard to buy after a while. Like, I knew better than to invest in Daniel Bryan. God knows what people were thinking when, I don't know. Who did the screw up in 2015 that people cared about? I'd long since stopped caring.
Dean Ambrose.
Yeah, something like that. Like, you know what I mean? I'm well past that, but AEW fans are starting to get those early misfires. Like I think they're at the, you've just changed SmackDown, even though I really liked it. Yeah. 2002, maybe we're at that stage of the timeline in terms of complete erosion of faith.
Talk about like when you just want to invest in the fiction versus knowing what goes on in reality. I do wonder sometimes if part of that is rooted in what, you can't speak for everybody, there's no group think on this, but what a lot of people's perception of the actual promoter might be. So once the perception was in, that Vince McMahon was this stubborn old brain-dead idiot that was never going to do anything other than what he liked at the expense of everything else, and you would see countless bouts of evidence to suggest that fix was in. And then anytime a good thing happened, it was luck and chance and your favourite wrestlers having one good night at work. Conversely, Triple H and NXT created all this sense of goodwill around himself and faith around himself as back to basics and the type of wrestling he liked and all that sort of stuff. Then, when AEW came to kind of expose his model and his way of doing things as kind of fatally flawed, the perception then of Triple H became he's digging his heels in with his chrome and his skulls and he thinks this is the best and you're going to get it whether you like it or not. So that faith was lost. He's regained that on the main roster, and the current perception of Triple H as a booker is just this guy that is really, really pleased to be in this position of power. And he likes the camera too much, but he understands his A to B to C kind of better than anybody else out there at the moment. The perception of Tony Khan has changed from the guy that seized control in early 2020. He had a good second month, especially.
Yeah, February was fantastic.
Like he seized really control for the greater good of his promotion, and was able to like sort of employ all of these skills he developed as a fans, that so many of them were similar to some of the ones that we had, spending the same time on the same forums, watching the same matches. The perception is now of an overworked man who has lost control. Feckless, who listens to too many voices. Some of them are right or wrong, you can debate that, but like that perception, you might never get the 2020 Tony Khan perception back. And then that, I think, is part of it as well, because we're all watching through so many different lenses. We are watching the product, but we are judging the wrestlers. From a Chris Jericho's political maneuverings to a Tony Khan's management of talent to a whatever.
Feckless.
Yeah, but you watch it through all of those lenses at the same time.
Matt Rain's back in the chat.
Hello.
Says, us AEW fans know it's not perfect. I criticize it all the time. It's this notion that it's 2000 WCW or 2019 WWE that's ridiculous. Yeah, completely agree. Also hope got more of a pop there because he said, Eric got a better reaction than me. Where's my respect? Earlier on. And Mark Lee Willis just clarifying the comments from JR about Mox says, JR said that when he first talked to Mox, he got the impression that Mox wasn't all sane, mentally unstable and the like. So yeah.
That's just
lazy, yeah.
I don't put stock in it personally. Again, if AEW started to sort of be like as an entity that I want to think is okay by the standards of a wrestling promotion, if they start to reflect that, I'd be annoyed. But I just tune JR out. Better for everyone.
Is that his way of saying that like Shivani and Excalibur
is capable of anything? He's just trying to orchestrate.
Riddles is what they've been using, isn't it, as a phrase?
He's always said that about Moxley, though. Different kind of cat and all the rest of it. He's just trying to put across that he's capable of anything and he's a bad dude or whatever. And again, maybe you don't conflate that with the state of your head. Yeah. But it's Jim Ross. Just don't take him seriously. It's fine.
Don't tell Jim Ross that Danielson can't have any sizzle to his steak either, because he'll really flip out then. What do you mean? Final couple of questions. Just Daryl snuck a few in here. He says, happy Monday, Goat. Sid, you mentioned All Out 2022. What if it's not Lashley being teased with MVP, but Keith Lee? Pay that off or whatever. Look at it or whatever. Also, just Daryl asks, Hamflet, Friday's tea. I'm not sure if that was what was you had for tea on Friday or what you're going to
think
have.
About that, I'll answer the question.
Yeah.
It would be very AEW to try and like reignite, that was ever that hot, the Swerve versus Keith Lee feud. It'd be very AEW to go, remember this, that you've kind of forgotten about and stopped caring about? Well, time to bring that back. What?
Just like you remember.
Just like you remember.
It did come up, didn't it? Five for Select said that was like when they were reporting on Keith Lee's health still unknown, his status and all that sort of stuff. There had been discussion of it in late 2023. Was the last time they were going to revisit it. I remember us talking about it on the news. And you're like, and you can, again, to your point, you can kind of imagine it. You can imagine the conversation.
That they would do that, yeah. No, is my answer. Poor Keith Lee, I don't think he's in the best place. No. Actually, you know what? I've got no idea, so scrub that from the record. It's just whenever there's mystery, it's never good, usually.
6 packets of wheat crunchies and 2 Kinder Buenos because I had one in the office.
He brought it into the office,
I had one in, I couldn't wait. So I had one in the office, and then I had, and 2 cans of Cherry Tango.
It would be a really funny place to end this podcast here, but thankfully we've got one more question from Jeff Oliver, who says, do you see any similarities between the Bucks and peak John Cena? Everyone does their best work with them. Half the crowd hates them regardless, and opponents fritter away after their programs.
Nah. I get it. It's an interesting thought exercise. I like it when you can draw parallels between two like performers or like even like films or whatever. It's a fun thing to think of.
Because they're so wild in theory, and then
I mean they're incredibly divisive. That's definitely a shared attribute between them. Look, the thing is, John Cena didn't book John Cena, right? The Young Bucks do not book the Young Bucks. I will say that it's a lot of people that the Young Bucks worked with. I mean, if you want them to go away or not be mainstays in the tag division, be better than them. And a lot of teams aren't. That's a reality. John Cena, until he started to be less of a dick deeper into his career, some of his opponents were eaten alive. Look, have the Young Bucks ever done to anyone what John Cena did with The Miz? Just to use one example. The answer is absolutely not. The Young Bucks basically structure their matches around the idea that their opponents are giving them the biggest run for their money every single time. It shouldn't be allowed as a formula because it shouldn't work, but it just does. They're so great. They've never chewed up spat on. Like what John Cena did with Baron Corbin and The Miz. Corbin and The Miz. The Young Bucks have never wrestled anyone with as much contempt as that. And if it's a team isn't in the best place after that feud, blame Tony Khan. Blame Tony Khan.
Yeah, can't disagree with any of that. You cannot conflate status as as being a reason. Like the Young Bucks, especially this stuff at the moment. The idea that they even tweeted in that doesn't work for us, brother. They hear those whispers. They're being booked. They're booked characters, and their win-loss record is like a perfectly normal wrestling win-loss record. They just happen to be winning.
Not really. It's 250-50 in 2024.
Well, and John Cena.
Only in those trios matches. That's fine.
Like, I like quite a lot of what John Cena's done, but the burials really stick out because he would always say,
You're not ready, kid.
what Sid just said about, I'll take our spot then. Like, Cena would always say that out loud. Like, I'll step aside when something like, I love this goddamn company so much. Like, that somebody will take the spot when I'm ready, when like they're proven that they can do it the way that I do it. But he just
Even Bryan didn't take the spot. He was injury prone.
Cena
He's my favorite, but
warped all the rules of what it was to even have that spot.
Yeah.
You know, like the damage he did in that role is probably still being felt today by someone like Cody Rhodes, who is like right now, like pulling better houses than Cena did in some of his leaner years. I don't know about merch or anything like
best
that.
years?
Yeah.
His best years?
33 out of 35
Aye.
things.
He's outdrawing Cena at Cena's peak.
And yet, like Cody Rhodes is a guy that, on the surface at least, doesn't look like he tries to chew guys up and spit them out. Like, he seems like a guy that knows that he's in a fight with Roman Reigns for that spot, and that will come again when somebody else is there or thereabouts. Cena would just, look what Cena did to Roman Reigns when the company are like, John, this is the guy. Like, we've put him over kind of everybody else, so like we're stuck with him now, even if like sometimes we're not sure if we want him. Do what you can with him. I get you, boss. And kills him. Like, just absolutely kills him on that roll.
It's called a promo, kid. You're going to have to learn how to cut one.
That's not exactly. I don't think you fully understood the assignment there, John. So yeah, it's. I don't. I think, despite it being quite a fun thing to,
It's a fun thought experiment,
yeah.
but it's just not true.
Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you to everyone who's joined us live on YouTube. Thank you for all your questions. We'll do another Q&A, no doubt, later on this week because there's lots of things to talk about following a WrestleDream. But let us know your thoughts on that show in the comments section below or on X at WhatCulture WWE. Watch so you can follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
Follow Michael Sidgwick at
I'm Sidgwick.
Follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow our brilliant producer at It's Adam Nicholas. And follow us all, as I said, at WhatCulture WWE. Make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. The SmackDown review is available right now. The Raw preview is coming away later on today. And we'll be back later on this week, of course, to preview and review AEW Dynamite. But for now, this has been the AEW WrestleDream review. My thanks to Hamflett Sidgwick. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you soon.